Hi everybody, I want to do a very quick video on the law of God. I want to talk about Luke 13. Jumping in at verse 10, it just says, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Sabbath day. A woman was there who for 18 years had had an evil spirit in her that made her crippled. Her back was always bent and she could not stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her over and said, "Woman, you are free from your sickness." Jesus put his hands on her and immediately she was able to stand up straight and began praising God. The synagogue leader was angry because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath day. He said to the people, "There are 6 days when one has to work, so come to be healed on one of those days and not the Sabbath day." The Lord answered, "You hypocrites! Doesn't each of you untie your work animals and lead them to drink water every day, even on the Sabbath day? This woman that I healed, a daughter of Abraham, has been held by Satan for 18 years. Surely it is not wrong for her to be freed from her sickness on the Sabbath day." When Jesus said this, all of those who were criticizing him were ashamed, but the crowd rejoiced at the wonderful things that Jesus was doing. Quick video on the law of God. Here we go. Okay, so why was the Pharisee or the leader of the temple or the leader of the synagogue even, why were they angry? Because there's a law in the Old Testament that says you must not work on the Sabbath day. Does that mean God can't work on the Sabbath day? Jesus was God. But, quite apart from that point, Jesus broke many laws of Moses. He wasn't meant to touch death. He touched it. In another video, I talk about how he wasn't meant to touch a woman with her period. She shouldn't be around him. She touched him and got healed. He wasn't meant to talk to the woman at the well, but he spoke to her. Jesus did many things he was not meant to do, and the religious people were always watching him, always watching him. But they missed the meaning of the law. Do you know, to the Jews, Torah means guidelines, guidance, instruction. It doesn't mean set laws. Why is this? Because all of the laws were built on two laws. Jesus said, "I've not come to take the law away, I've come to fulfill it. I've come to show you how to fulfill it in your life, and I've come to die to fulfill the part which is the judgment part of the law, where we need a sacrifice to forgive us of our sins." So he fulfilled that part and showed us how to fulfill the rest. And he said all of the law is built on two laws. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind and soul, and love your neighbour as yourself. In other words, all the other laws were made as guidelines so that we fulfill those two. They're going to be different in every culture. Why? Because culture moves on. Times move on. What would have hurt someone then or been disrespectful to someone then is not disrespectful in the same way to someone now. We now have sanitizers and things like that, so we don't need to go outside of the camp to go to the toilet and stop disease coming into the camp. But back then they did, and that was a law. One of my friends pointed that out to me recently from a book. So thank you for that, Kay. So anyway, going back to the main point, all of these laws were actually made so we fulfilled the first two laws. Jesus said himself, food was made for the stomach, not the stomach made for food. The law was made for the man, not the man made for the law. So in other words, the law didn't come first. If the law was divine truth that will never be changed and we all have to follow it, then it would have been made before man was made. But man was made, then the law was made. The law was made to give men guidelines on how to fulfill love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind and soul, and love your neighbour as yourself. So Jesus came and he fulfilled the two main laws. He said, stop looking rigidly at letters. Stop looking for this, you must live like this, and learn to live in spirit and in truth. Truth there being sincerity, being transparency, being integrity, genuineness before God. Live with the spirit and genuineness before God. How do we do that? Getting alone with God, being honest with God, talking out our issues with God, and listening for his spirit, and asking for the empowerment of his spirit, and living by his spirit, which will lead us to love the Lord our God with all our hearts, mind, soul and will, and love our neighbours as ourselves. Let's ask God to write the law on our heart as he said he would. Let's ask God to speak to us about how we can live out a life of love and live in the spirit and in truth. See you in the next video. Take care.